Welcome back to Mega Stadiums. Today we're exploring one of the most anticipated stadium decisions in English football, Newcastle United's bold plans for the future. With their historic St James Park bursting at the seams and matchday demand at an all-time high, the Magpies face a monumental choice: expand their beloved home or build a spectacular new stadium. From the iconic hilltop fortress that has stood for over 130 years to the cutting-edge proposals that could transform Newcastle into one of Europe's premier footballing destinations. Let's get started. St James's Park has been the spiritual home of Newcastle United since the stadium first opened its gates in 1892. By 1899, the first major upgrade increased capacity to 30,000 spectators, and in 1905, the construction of what is now known as the Milburn Stand doubled the stadium's capacity to an impressive 60,000, making St James's Park one of the largest and most advanced venues in the country. The most significant transformation came in the 1990s. Following the Taylor Report and new seating safety regulations, St James's Park underwent a dramatic reduction in capacity. By 1995, the all-seater configuration had brought the capacity down to just 36,310, less than half of what it had once been. It was during this period that Sir John Hall, the club's chairman at the time, presented a controversial plan to relocate Newcastle United to a brand new stadium at Leazes Park. Instead, the club chose to invest in its historic home. In 2000, Newcastle committed £43 million to a major expansion project that extended both the Milburn and Leazes stands, transforming them into impressive three-tier structures. When the work was completed, the stadium's capacity had risen to 52,304. At the time of completion, St James's Park was the third largest stadium in England, a source of pride for the club and the city. But as we move through the 2020s, that relative standing has shifted significantly. Today, St James's Park ranks as the 9th largest football stadium in England. It sits just behind the new Hill Dickinson Stadium and ahead of the Stadium of Light in Sunderland. Since the transformative takeover by the PIF in 2021, Newcastle United has experienced a remarkable resurgence. The club won the EFL Cup in 2025, qualified for the UEFA Champions League twice in the last 3 seasons, and is now widely regarded as England's 7th major footballing power, a member of what some call the Big Seven. This sporting success has only intensified the pressure on the stadium infrastructure. The demand for tickets at St James's Park is unprecedented. Newcastle United currently sell just 32,000 season tickets, a figure that hasn't changed significantly despite overwhelming interest. When the club released a new batch of season tickets in 2021, tens of thousands of supporters applied within hours. Current estimates suggest that between 88,000 and 150,000 registered members are unable to secure tickets for matches on a regular basis. Increasing capacity would generate significant additional revenue for the club and would also allow more supporters to witness the team's renaissance. Newcastle United's leadership now stands at a crossroads, weighing 2 dramatically different paths forward. The decision will shape not only the club's financial future, but also its identity and connection to the city. Peter Silverstone, the club's chief commercial officer, recently acknowledged the magnitude of the choice facing the board. In a public statement, he said, "We're at that point where we're deciding, is it best to renovate and reinvigorate St James's Park or build a new stadium, as these projects have shown and other clubs in the Premier League have done. That is a decision which will be made relatively soon." However, his perspective appears to contrast with remarks made by Brad Miller, Newcastle's chief operating officer, in November 2024. Miller emphasized the unique advantages of St James's Park's current setup, stating, "The brilliant thing about St James's is it is in an iconic location, the atmosphere, and it has 52,000 seats already. But a new stadium doesn't have that, and we'd have to pay for all those seats again." Miller's words hint at the complexity of the internal debate, balancing financial pragmatism with the emotional and historical weight of the club's home. What is clear from both statements is that Newcastle's ownership is actively evaluating the trade-offs. The first option on the table is a redevelopment of St James's Park. This approach would see the club remain at its historic home while undertaking a major expansion to increase capacity, improve facilities, and modernize the stadium to meet the demands of elite football. The plan currently being discussed involves adding approximately 12,700 seats, which would lift the stadium's total capacity to around 65,000. If completed, this would make St James's Park the second largest stadium in the Premier League, surpassed only by Old Trafford. The focal point of the expansion would be the Gallowgate End, one of the most famous stands in English football. Under the proposed redevelopment, the Gallowgate stand would be significantly enlarged, adding around 9,000 seats and bringing its total capacity to over 20,000. This would create a towering, intimidating wall of supporters behind one goal, similar in concept to Borussia Dortmund's iconic yellow vault. However, expanding St James's Park is far from straightforward. The stadium is hemmed in on all sides by the city's infrastructure, and the most significant obstacle lies behind the East Stand. A row of historic Georgian buildings sits directly adjacent to the stadium on this side, making any substantial extension of the East Stand nearly impossible without demolishing or relocating protected structures. Given this constraint, the redevelopment plan would likely involve only modest upgrades to the East Stand. The Milburn and Leazes stands, which were rebuilt in 2000, already feature three-tier structures and are relatively modern by English football standards. While some interior upgrades and improved hospitality facilities are likely, these stands would not require the same level of structural intervention as the Gallowgate End. This phased approach would help to minimize disruption and allow the club to continue playing at St James's Park throughout much of the construction process. One more ambitious, but technically challenging possibility has also been discussed: elevating the pitch and shifting it closer to the Milburn Leazes side of the stadium. This would effectively create additional space on the East Stand side, allowing for some expansion without encroaching on the Georgian buildings behind. However, this would be a significant architectural and engineering challenge, involving the reconfiguration of the playing surface, drainage systems, and underground infrastructure. It would also likely add substantial cost and complexity to the project. While not impossible, this option remains speculative. The second option is to build a brand new stadium. This path would allow Newcastle United to design a world-class venue without the constraints of the current site, offering the potential for greater capacity, superior facilities, and a modern matchday experience that could rival any stadium in Europe. According to reports, the proposed new stadium would hold approximately 70,000 spectators, making it one of the largest club stadiums in England. The preferred location for this ambitious project is Leazes Park, a historic public green space located just north of St James's Park. It was the same location proposed by Sir John Hall in the 1990s, a plan that was ultimately abandoned due to fan opposition and logistical concerns. Now, more than 3 decades later, the idea has re-emerged with renewed backing from the club's ownership. The proximity to the current stadium is seen as a key advantage, as it would allow Newcastle to maintain a strong presence in the city centre. However, building a new stadium at Leazes Park would be far from straightforward. The site is a cherished public space, and any proposal to develop it for commercial purposes would face significant resistance. In March 2025, Save Newcastle Wildlife warned that construction at Leazes Park could negatively affect the city's environment and biodiversity. By June 2025, an online petition opposing the stadium plans had gathered more than 28,000 signatures, reflecting the depth of local concern. The club would need to navigate a complex planning process, engage with community stakeholders, and secure approval from local authorities, none of which can be taken for granted. Architecturally, early reports and unofficial concept images suggest that the new stadium could draw inspiration from iconic European venues such as the Allianz Arena in Munich. While no official designs have been released, the emphasis would be on creating a visually striking, technologically advanced facility with world-class hospitality, corporate spaces, and fan amenities. The stadium would be designed to host not only football matches, but also concerts, international events, and other large-scale gatherings, maximizing revenue potential year-round. For Newcastle United, the appeal of a new stadium is primarily financial and strategic. In an era where financial fair play and Premier League profitability and sustainability rules constrain how much owners can directly invest, this kind of infrastructure upgrade offers a legal and sustainable path to competitive advantage. The financial implications of either option are staggering. According to recent reports, redeveloping St. James's Park to add 12,700 seats and increase capacity to around 65,000 would cost between £800 million and £1 billion. This figure reflects the complexity of expanding a confined urban site, the need to maintain operations during construction, and the expense of modern stadium infrastructure. Building a brand new 70,000-seat stadium at Leazes Park or another site would be significantly more expensive, with estimates ranging from £2.2 billion to £3 billion, becoming the most expensive stadium ever built in England and the second most expensive in the world, surpassed only by the $5 billion SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. One of the most significant revelations in recent days is that the club's owners will not fully fund the project themselves. In September 2025, the Daily Mail reported that any new stadium or expansion of St. James's Park would be funded through a combination of owner investment and club debt. The timeline for either project is similarly ambitious. Newcastle officials have indicated that a final decision on which path to pursue could be announced in 2025. Once a decision is made, the club would enter a 2-year period of detailed planning, consultations, and securing necessary approvals from local authorities. Following this preparatory phase, construction itself is expected to take between 3 and 4 years. This means that a new or redeveloped stadium could realistically open its doors sometime between 2030 and 2031, a time frame that aligns with the club's broader strategic vision for the next decade. The financial upside is clear. Newcastle United generated approximately £40 million in matchday revenue during the 2023/24 season. Expanding St. James's Park to 65,000 seats would increase that figure to around £55 million per season, a boost of £15 million annually. Building a brand new 70,000-seat stadium with enhanced hospitality and commercial spaces could push matchday revenue to approximately £100 million per season, more than doubling the club's current income. Over the lifespan of the stadium, these increases would amount to hundreds of millions of pounds in additional revenue, making the initial investment not just justifiable, but essential for the club's long-term competitiveness. As Newcastle United approaches its 150th anniversary, the stadium decision represents one of the most important moments in the club's modern history. Whether they choose to redevelop their iconic home or build a spectacular new venue, the next chapter promises to be transformative. The only certainty is that the status quo is no longer an option. And that's the full picture of Newcastle United's stadium dilemma, a historic home under pressure, 2 bold visions for the future, and a decision that will shape the club for generations to come. Whether they expand the Gallowgate into a fortress or build a brand new 70,000-seat super stadium, one thing is certain. The next chapter will define Newcastle's place among Europe's elite. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and swipe and hype. Let us know in the comments, what should Newcastle do? Redevelop St. James's Park or build a brand new stadium? Thanks for watching. See you next week.